Retention season is up and running. Ahead of the Diwali deadline, we have an exclusive first news break coming. It's the Sunrisers Hyderabad who have made a splash to try and retain most of the core that took them to the IPL 2024 finals. Nagraj, Gollapudi and Raunak Kapoor on ESPN Cricinfo Newsroom as we try to break down what is a seriously explosive statement coming from Sunrisers, the first team to declare their retentions, and they have gone all out, Naga.
Yeah, just like the strike rate of Travis Head and Abhishek Sharma last year, they have just made a statement, like a telling statement. I mean, rival franchises and officials are asking, have pinged me, saying that is this really true? Is this have they actually signed people? While because the others are still like negotiating, and here the negotiations are finished. And as Ronak would tell you more about the proactiveness of Sunrisers, has to be kind of commended for this, and they have kind of gone for. I mean, their picks. If you look at their picks, the three names, it was a no-brainer, and the two other names which we are likely to be signed by probably the end of the week or something. I think they're closing on that. It's not a surprise as such, those five names, but yeah, people would be surprised by maybe probably White Larson as the top retention, but we'll break down on that later on.
Yeah.
Yes, the names and the figures attached, especially 23 crore, worth spending some time on. But before that, Ronak, on the whole, when we saw the retention rules come out and we had Tom Moody with us, we were exploring whether teams will be dissuaded by that high amount of 75 crore if they want to retain all five. Sunrisers suggesting that the core is more valuable than whatever we thought.
Absolutely. And I think that's great news for Sunrisers fans because post David Warner and Rashid Khan, I think the Sunrisers lost their way trying to build their franchise around an identity, around a core group. Core group is something you associate with CSK, MI, some of the other franchises, even KKR to a large degree. But what the Sunrisers have done here, I think it's they've set they've sent a serious statement to the rest of the league. It's the sign of a confident franchise, one that's been able to secure their top five players. And let's make no mistake, these are their top five players. If you have to pick five players that you want to retain, these are the five that we're going with Klaasen, Cummiins, Travis Head, Abhishek Sharma, Nitish, Reddy in whatever order. I don't think any other franchise is going to have it as easy to retain their top five. They may still end up retaining five players, but it's not going to be easy with the kind of personal value that a lot of players will feel like they command, the temptation of going into this auction with the extended purse, etc. So what this tells me about the Sunrisers is this is a confident and extremely efficient management setup that has been able to convince their core group that we want to carry on from what happened last year. The IPL may be resetting, but our plan is to take it one step forward. And Pat Cummins' leadership is key to that. You may be out with your own opinions on whether Pat Cummins is worth 18 or 20 crore. That doesn't matter anymore. They've said it doesn't matter to us that we're losing 75. They're not looking at it like that. They're looking at this and saying, we're going to enter this auction with our core intact. And for me, and I think Naga will attest to this, with the uncertainty that will come with this year's auction, having this kind of core intact is an advantage. So I don't think they lose a balanced purse. They've gained a serious advantage by securing their top five players. So really well done to them.
And
Yeah.
also, I think the other bit is which becomes, I guess, you would ask this question, and many people will start thinking is the retention slabs. The retention people are already like some people have asked me how come this is how is Klaasen getting 23 when we thought that the top retention slab is 18 crores, but actually the IPL also has a rule which says that if you are retaining five cap players, you have a pot of 75 crores to begin with. You slice it however which way you want, as long as
Correct.
it is. And if you exceed 75 crores also, let's say if they were to go to 78 or 79, that will be deducted from the overall purse. So in this case, uh, the Sunrisers felt that Klaasen is the will be the most sought after player if we release him in the auction. So I'm willing to pay him this much, and as long as I stick to that 75 crore
And
limit.
to and
Yeah.
to answer your first point, Yash, on the 75 crore, it sounds like a lot, but we recalibrate our numbers with the extended purse, so the 120 crore. And if you look at KKR's strategy of last year, which is heavily investing in your playing 11, maybe you're playing 12 with the impact player, but the team that won the championship last year, that was about 82 crore of their purse out of 100. So 82% was spent on the team that actually played in their first team.
Yeah.
That may well be a strategy that's replicated by a lot of teams. If you now look at 120 crore purse, if you're paying 75 for five, about 80% of your purses can take you up to 90, 96. So you still have enough to form a strong 11 beyond these five players. You may well see a thin squad. You may not see a galactico of superstar players in a squad of 20. You'll see
Hmm.
five or seven really, really strong players, and you can mix and match and make the rest depending on how the auction plays out. So I don't think it's as much of a shock for people to say if you retain players worth 75, you're going to lose out at the auction, because there aren't too many teams that actually scream out for players that command this kind of value. And the fact that
Hmm.
Sunrisers have those players and have managed to secure them, that I think is really smart business.
Okay, so now break down the individuals, and Heinrich Klaasen has to be spoken because after a season where Sunrisers set the bar at a different level, as Nagraj pointed, they've also set this auction retention bar at a different slab because you thought 18 crore is the highest figure you'll have to
Yes.
pay for potentially two of your biggest players in any squad. What does this 23 crore figure for Klaasen mean, not just to Sunrisers and their purse, but also the message it sends out?
You worked
Well,
out the math for me, so just tell me, what is it? 338%? How much
Yeah,
was
it's
that?
yes.
nearly it's a more than four times
He
increase
was
of.
at 5.25 crore for the last cycle. So this is a
Yeah,
big.
yeah. I think from what I have gathered, and Raunak can vouch for it too, or Dub, correct me if I'm wrong, is this is from the stuff I gathered is that a if on form, on skill sets, Klaasen is like one of the rare kind of players at the moment in terms of power hitting. Someone and also someone who is a wicket keeping all rounder for them. Don't forget that a wicket keeper batter, which is also a very mostly a kind of a sought after skill set in IPL auctions and IPL. So they already have in Klaasen that guy who can bat in the middle order, right from the top order to as a finisher also, who can bat anywhere and as well as keep for them. And if they release him, they thought that if we release him into the auction, we realize that there will be at least 2 to 3 teams that will be willing to pay, who will come when they are confident that they'll come with a massive purse and grab someone like Klassen for 20 plus crores. The other one bit I just will quickly add is Klassen also had received overtures from, it seems, from rival teams who were willing to kind of asking him to come to the auction with the promise that they will pay him a certain amount which would be in the vicinity of 20 crores, whether the RT now that, and what became a talking point I think for Sunrisers would have been the adjunct to the RTM rule. They would have thought, okay, fine, in the previous RTM rule, I'm willing to pay Klassen this much, do you want it? If not, I'll get you at RTM. But now the rival teams are saying that we are willing to hike that price to a certain level which is in the 20 or 20 plus crore. That's why they felt that, okay, why waste our time, why don't we want this player? And apparently Cummins is also involved in this because they remember that he is going to be the captain, from
Yes.
what I understand. So his viewers and on Cummins wish list was top name was Klassen, along with of
Yeah,
course the other guys.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
People are still.
the simple point the viewers must remember is the value of a player now is not to be seen in comparison with other players in his own squad, with other Indian marquee players in other teams. It's simply what another franchise believes they're willing to pay for. That's the simple point that each franchise has to decide on their own value of a player when they decide to retain him or not. And there is nothing illegal about someone at the other franchise is having a word with Heinrich Klaasen or his agent and simply saying that's what we're willing to pay. And if with the new RTM rule, we're allowed to pay. So that allows for the player then to tell the franchise what his fair expectation is. There's no downside to Klaasen, the player. He is, like Nagraj says, in a category of perhaps just two with Nicholas Puran, as someone who's mature in his international career, who has stood the test of time in the IPL, who is a match winner. My only apprehension with Klaasen is being a player that will now have to potentially live up to perhaps this highest ever price tag for a South African player, live
Hmm.
up to that kind of weightage and pressure. That's only Sunrisers and Heinrich Klaasen will know if they're confident that this price tag is not going to affect performance. For very many years, the great AB de Villiers perhaps didn't command a top price auction bid because he was content with where he was, and he remains perhaps the greatest ever IPL player from South Africa. So when you don't put yourself in that position to unnecessarily let the headline and the conversation be around price tag and pressure like that and simply performance, you, for many individuals, you end up being more valuable. So that is Klaasen's big challenge next year. There is no doubt that he would have commanded 20 plus crore going into the auction. So the Sunrisers have weighed that out and said, we're not going to gamble on this. We're not going to send him to the auction and see if we can nick him for 2, 3 crore less. That's not a gamble you want to pay with how unpredictable the auction can turn out. So that's what makes his retention, it makes it make sense. And the other point I'll say
Now,
here is that it was what Pat Cummins, what Nagraj said about Pat Cummins is very important, because you don't have the clash of egos here where someone is fighting or competing with Cummins to become the top retention. You're happy to concede that. Pat Cummins may very well be taking a pay cut from last year to this year, but he gets the bigger picture. He's got a great position in that franchise with the head coach Daniel Vittori, with the influence of Travis Head and what they achieved last year. So a lot of things have come together here to ensure that Klaasen's top retention is actually just par for the course.
yeah, wonder if other franchises now will perhaps consider the captain not being the highest paid
It's a
retained
really
player.
good point to make. You might say it in jest, but their proactiveness will make other players and franchises think. A lot of people may not even know that you had the option. I'm not sure the franchises knew, but people in and around players often don't know the rules, and
Hmm.
players at times may not be forthrightly communicated that we can spend up to 22, 23 to retain you, not just the official slap that the BCCI gave out at 18, 14, 11, 18, 14. So now if Heinrich Klaasen's 23, that in some way throws the cat amongst the pigeons in other franchises where you could have marquee players, alpha players, Indian players saying, hello, we want 21, 22, 23 at least. And that is a challenge that those other franchises will now have, that Sunrisers have overcome.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck to those teams. A few of whom do have three or four worthy candidates for the highest retention figure. Good luck to them without naming any of those teams. But the one question I do want to ask while you talk about the figure and it going above 20 crore, it could be a question that comes quite often from the outside. When we see the history of mega auctions, you haven't usually seen those humongous figures. All the record buys have come at mini auctions. And as far as mega auctions go, the 15.25 crore to Ishan Kishan last time around was the highest. 2022 was the first time 14 crore was breached at a mega auction. Even keeping in mind the swelled up purses this time around, do we expect that figure players would go at say close to 22, 23 crore?
Yeah, I mean the purse has kind of increased considerably. From what from 100 to 120 crores right now from last auction. So that by itself, which means that the players' salaries are going to be enhanced, and the players themselves know that. That's why they are kind of negotiating hard. There are other names that we spoke about. We will keep hearing about, or the gossip is going on about some big marquee names, both Indian and overseas players, because they believe that they definitely will get more than 18 crores, which is the top retentions slab set by IPL. And I guess it also depends on certain franchising want to not just overhaul, but others some looking for captains. So the demand and supply is always going to kind of, I think, uh, influence the things. There is nothing new on that, but a bigger purse eventually translates into bigger, what do you say, salaries for players. And the players, one of the analysts was telling me that the player power this time is bigger than in any other auction previously.
Correct.
So the players are negotiating better, and they're becoming much smarter. Also, the managers always there, but the players now are themselves involving.
And
So
look,
lots of them.
let's look at what we base our judgment on when we talk about the history of auctions. The history that we rely on is essentially an 8-team IPL with a smaller purse. The only other big auction with 10 teams was when the two new teams were allowed trades, right? Which again didn't give you fair value of how things would be when they have to when they have to enter the auction premeditatively with retentions. So if you take away all that over there and simply now look at this as a completely different era, with you can add inflation to it, you can add the added purse, but the 10-team point just makes it so much more likely that the top 4 or 5 players could go for anything. All you need is two teams. It could be Punjab and it could be Lucknow, or it could be anyone who's looking for that keeper batter or that middle order finisher. Klaasen is an option that people would want, even if he's not your keeper. He's that good a player right now. He's also a South African player who you can rely on his availability for, as against a lot of the other international players where workload, their board's approval is going to come under the scanner. So he's in a really, really niche league. There will be other players that can offset each other. You can get people in the category of David Miller, people in the category of Glenn Maxwell, people in the category to a degree even of a Ben Stokes or a Sam Curran should they enter the auction. But who is in the category of Heinrich Klaasen? For me, it's just Nicholas Puran, and there's every chance that he might follow a similar trajectory. So this is not as inflated a cost as a lot of people may initially think. Yes, it sounds big, 23. Oh, we thought they could only be retained for 18. Oh, Kohli and Dhoni and Rohit and Bumrah have never been retained for more than this. But you have to forget all that and now look at what will happen in the next few days as a result of the Klaasen retention. That'll put things in perspective.
All right, then. We seem quite set for what should be a blockbuster fortnight or so till this retention deadline comes up, and you are sure to see a lot of these gentlemen as we break whatever we hear from the other teams. ESPN Cricinfo will have you covered. Sunrisers still have more business that they could yet do. There is an uncapped slot that they could still potentially look to fill. Nagraj will have the details as and when that unfolds. We leave it here, and there is so much to reprise yourselves of as far as all the rules of this new retention cycle is concerned. You can find that on the ESPN Cricinfo mobile app.